This is a briefing on the sort of for Network Rail Southern, for the sort of current situation for them and looking forward to the future. And welcome Cameron, Tim, Darren and Sam, who I think Tim and Cameron are going to present to us, and Sam and Darren are here to help with the Q&A as I understand it, but things will develop. I think we all welcome this. And please don't repeat what I'm saying here, but Network Rail Southern have always been a bit of a trendsetter. What they do, they're usually a control period ahead of everybody else in the way they do things. So it's always very welcome to hear from them. I think if you could all, when the talk start, please turn your cameras off and mute your microphones. Then when we get to Q&A, we can put them back on. I think the best way to deal with Q&A is to wave the large yellow hand and to talk to people, but if you want to put a comment in the string, we could deal with those as well. And Leon will be recording this event for people who weren't able to actually take part, to give them the opportunity to catch up on it. So if you've got any objections to that, I don't know what we're not going to not record it. So anyhow, so long as you know you're being recorded, I suppose is the main thing. And there was one other point. Cameron said he'd be able to share the slides with you afterwards, so you don't need to sit there with your cameras taking pictures of every slide that comes up. So without further ado, I think Cameron, you're kicking off, are you?
I am, yes.
Yep. Okay, so if we could go mute, go cameras off and let Cameron do his stuff. Thank you.
Right, if I can just get some indication that you can see my slide deck.
Yes. Yeah, I can see it.
All right, so I'll do some introductions in a moment. There'll be a three-way act between myself, Dan Calderwood, and Tim Coucher, and we've allocated some time at the end for Q&A. But yeah, if there's a burning issue that partway through, feel free to raise your yellow hand, and I'll try and keep an eye out for those. So, agenda for today, as I say, some introductions. We're going to talk about the Southern organisation, how we're set up, our priorities, a little bit about our plans for CP7, a little bit about how we're embracing project speed and pace, and then an opportunity, and we've left a reasonable amount of time at the end for any Q&A you may have. Introductions wise, so today I'm joined by Dan Calderwood, who's our Capital Delivery Director for Southern, Tim Coucher, Programme Director Transformation for Southern, Sam Turner, who's the Regional Commercial Director for Southern, and myself, I'm the Capital Commercial Director for Southern. So we're going to start off with talk about the organisation, Southern organisation, so I'll hand over to Darren. Darren, you.
Thanks, Cameron. So just a bit of positioning, I guess, first, and also thank you for having me, or us, should I say. I think you said we might be trendsetters. I've never been called that before, so I'm going to enjoy that for the rest of the afternoon. I guess just to position this in terms of what this is really about, and I'm going to have to put my glasses on, which will help me massively. What this is really about is it's about the next journey for the business, and at sort of overall Network Rail level, we've got this very clear vision from our chief executive around putting passengers first, and with the evolution of the business, so with the business being broken into regional sectors, we are given the freedom to think about how we see that putting passengers first vision from above, how we see fit to translate that for our various regions, ours being Southern. And I guess this first slide is really just introducing that concept, and so I'm going to sort of run you through a few slides to explain where we're heading as a region. But that fits within, as I say, the wider PPF, or putting passengers first, intent for the business. So I'm going to talk a bit about our story, our delivery framework, a bit about culture, and a bit about operating model. And I'll take you through those now. Before I do, just sticking with this slide for a moment, we've referred to this slide as the splodge diagram, and the reason is that essentially the splodges are not rigid. They are not fully formed. There is movement. They are not set in stone, and that kind of concept of us having a bit of free thinking and to be a little bit more relaxed, I think is part and parcel of this whole message. So I know it may just look like some interesting graphics, but there was actual thought in the process of developing those splodges. If you could move us on, Cameron, that would be great. Thank you. So in terms of what we're really about, if we sort of pick the 4 key themes for us, these are effectively the four particular points that the PPF narrative requests, for us throughout the business. So on the side of passengers and freight users, and this is a really important point for us, that we really want to transform the way that we approach the passenger, the freight user, as mentioned, but also our communities, our neighbours, our sort of line-side neighbours, and how we interact with everybody. To be quite honest, it's more than just passengers and freight users. Instinctive industry leader is about us really continuing to carve a way forward and find new and better ways to do things, and to test and try those things and to demonstrate they can be done. Easy to engage with, efficient and dependable partner. I think it would be fair to reflect and say that on occasion we're not always the easiest company to deal with. And I should have mentioned that I'm relatively new to Network Rail. I joined at the start of the year, so I'm sort of finding my feet. And I guess I have a point of view based on my short tenure, but I've sort of formed a few opinions, and they'll probably come out as we go. But there are some things we're working on, and certainly one of those is how easy we are to work with and engage. There's obviously a big challenge around efficiency for us, and our dialogue with the ORR requires us to drive for that efficiency. And we want to be a dependable partner, and that is not changing direction too quickly, or too instantaneously, and doing things in perhaps a more logical and controlled manner. And then finally, we want to get to an environment where everybody's proud to work for the company, proud to work for Network Rail, proud to be part of something. And I think there's a distinction there to be made in that there is a huge passion, and again, in my short time, what I see is a huge passion and connection to the railway. What we really want to make sure is that we've got that connectivity to the business as well, that people are proud to work for the company. And I think that's just a subtle but important distinction. Next slide, please, Cameron. In terms of our operating model, so this is very much a southern model. We are essentially showing in this picture that in the middle there, you'll see the 4 routes, Sussex, Kent, Wessex and Network Rail High Speed. And of course, right in the centre, our stations. And those sort of 5 bubbles or swirls are basically the epicenter of what we do. They are our service proposition. That's where we engage the customer, the freight operator, etc. That's where it happens. And then around the edge are the vital services, and these are the services that make those 5 swirls work better. So or 5 routes, if you want to call them that, makes those routes work better, and those vital services sit around the edge and form part of the exec and everything. So we work together as a team, but it's all about driving performance in those 5 swirls. On we go, Cameron. Thank you, mate. In terms of so if you take that forward and then move that into a delivery framework, you get a picture of. I'm not going to read through this. I think that might be a bit dry. So, but it gives you a view of how we plan to set ourselves up and deliver. And those 10 segments, none of them will be massively surprising. If we told you we were focused on train performance and safety and well-being and efficiency, growth, none of those would be a shock at all. I'm quite sure. But I guess from my point of view, and as Capital Delivery Director, I guess I'm hanging about mostly in the sort of red sector of the diagram, and that's where my focus is going, of course, with a heavy dose of green around safety and well-being. So that's probably where my remit is. But of course, I have the ability to affect all of the other segments as well with what I do. I think I'll probably leave that model there, and people have digested it. I think we're talking about finding ways to do things better, but that can only happen. So if we want to be better in terms of service and create an environment of service excellence, then that has to come with a change in culture, a change in the way we think, feel, and act, and that doesn't happen by simply creating a framework and putting it on a screen. We need to create the culture that goes with it and empower people to do things differently, empower people to say what's on their mind. So there's a really important piece that we're working on now, which is all around effectively how it feels to work in the southern region. And what we're trying to do is get to a place where people feel empowered to act. That it's always with safety at heart, but that we care about people. And of course we care about people, but sometimes I think we use language that suggests or might indicate that we don't, but we definitely do. But we get a bit engineering-y sometimes, and we lose the people, that people touch. Of course, teamwork is key. But in terms of our behaviours, we want to be customer-driven. We want people to be and feel accountable for the work that they do, when it's good or bad, and that's very important. Collaboration, we think, is at the heart of that. And for me, I just wanted to pick up on a particular phrase around collaboration, and that is, my team will be sick of hearing me say this, but professional collaboration. And by that I mean not collaboration as in let's all just hold hands and think everything is wonderful, but collaboration in its true sense, in its professional sense, as in we challenge. We have constructive, healthy challenge, and we know where our boundaries are, and we work together to get to the best answer. But that's not done just by simply all getting along. There has to be some professional challenge, but we resolve our differences at the end of the day. And for me, that's really, really important. So there's a fair bit to do there on culture. That's a big piece for us, and we believe it's a huge. There's somebody that's got a bit of background noise. If they wouldn't mind going on mute, thank you. So I think that whole piece of work around culture is a significant piece for us, and we know that there's quite a bit of work to do there. But we believe that that's a real enabler for the things that we'll be talking about this afternoon. If you could go on, Cameron. This is just a diagram that points to capital delivery as part of the vital services function. So we're going to go on one more slide. Thank you, Cameron. And sort of here we've got the sort of structure basically that just shows how we're set up and how we operate within the capital delivery environment. So I'll very quickly explain the diagram. But if you sort of see the green box, that green box is me, and then you've got in the bottom, in the sort of grey right-hand bottom box, the big box, you've got all of the gold boxes, and that's the sort of setup and structure that we're operating in capital delivery, with route delivery directors facing into each of the routes within the region, so Wessex, Sussex, Kent, and so on. So that's how we're set up. We have a specific track and signalling team and a high-speed rail team as well. Sorry, high-capacity rail systems team as well. And those fit together in that way. We also have works delivery teams that are split by route 2. So that diagram is essentially showing that. So we try. The idea of that is that it's customer focused, and what you can see are arrows through to Wessex, Sussex, and Kent route directors, effectively responsible for the operation, and those route delivery directors that report to me have a direct line into the route directors so that they can be part and parcel of the operating decisions that are made, the day-to-day running of the route, and that's very, very important. So their whole job is geared towards making the route function better. Alongside that, we've got the, as you would expect, health and safety, engineering, program controls and commercial elements that support all of that and make that possible. And that all sort of, that they basically support and help those teams to deliver. And then top left is SCD development, which is Southern Capital Delivery Development. That's all about the early phase design that helps to basically get schemes ready and prepare schemes for delivery, particularly around enhancements. So that's kind of the operating model for capital delivery, and I think we'll go on another slide. And then I guess just to pick out some, again, I'm not going to read this through, but I think there's a couple of things that I think I'd like to pick out in terms of priorities. And you'll see them ringing out loud and clear, and they'll fit with what Tim's going to talk about shortly. But really our focus in the red section is around, obviously there's the basics around things like health and safety, efficiency and delivery. But some key areas of focus for us are, for example, developing and getting ready for CP7 so that we approach it in the best way possible, implementing speed and pace initiatives, and I think, you know, and a few other things in there as well. But I think the key pieces there and the things that are really relevant for this afternoon's discussion are those two areas, which are all about effectively us finding a way to be more efficient, effective, move more quickly, be more nimble and agile, and get ourselves ready for the next control period so that we set ourselves up in the right way with the supply chain, we have the right commercial frameworks and agreements, and we learn from what we're, you know, learn from the situation that we're currently living in and get the best from it and leave behind the things that are not so great. So that's the intent. I think that might be, I thought it was made, not quite. In terms of priorities for capital delivery, I guess I've touched on much of this. I've probably covered a fair amount of it, but I'll pick out a couple of things that I think might have not specifically said. Track Workers Safety Programme is a whole piece around effectively ensuring that we put less people near trains. I mean, putting it very bluntly, that's the intention. And capital delivery are part of that activity to try and reduce the exposure of the workforce to moving trains. It sounds ridiculous, but that is actually very important that we reduce that frequency and the opportunity for people to get hurt. So there's a whole piece of work going on to work out how we better orchestrate our work and find ways to not be on the track at the same time as moving trains, which is something we've really got to crack. There's a whole piece around hearts and minds, and this is goes from getting the basics to getting people to appreciate the basics right through to a cultural piece. And we've got a piece of work now running to look at how we start to generate the culture that we want to have. And as I said, picking out just a few things that I think I would like to pull out from this chart, this page, is the strong relationships with the supply chain. I think that's essential if we're going to succeed in our mission. And I think there is a need to do a bit of rebalance around how we operate, communicate and share with the supply chain. That's both commercially, in terms of plus safety, and in terms of just the language and the way that we operate. And I think there's room there to move the needle. So we're focused on that. And then lastly, we really want to do these things, all of the things we do, in a cleaner, greener and more socially responsible way. And so that will involve us looking at things like low carbon concrete and steel, but also flow through to sort of the way that we impact society, the way that we deal with our line-side neighbours, the way that we deal with wildlife and nature. So that's a fairly broad church, but is a very important one. So I'm in danger of talking too much, so I'm going to pause there. I think that's my last slide.
It is, yes.
It is indeed. Thank you, Cameron. So I'm going to pause there and draw breath. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Darren. So as I said, we've allocated some time at the end. So if you do have any questions, Darren and Tim and Sam and myself will be available after this to answer any questions you have. So next on the agenda was just a piece providing you an update of where we are with our journey towards where we plan to be in CP7, project speed and pace. And I just welcome Tim Coucher. Thank you.
Thanks, Cameron. I'm going to show my screen if that's okay. Hopefully people can see that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Marvellous. So let me go straight into this. So what I'm going to show you really is the thinking so far. It is a direction of travel and it is early days. We tend to have a kind of a way of doing things in Network Rail, which is we kind of sit in a darkened room and develop these things on our own and come out with a fairly formed plan. We're taking a completely different view right now, because we are just as we develop thoughts, we're just putting them out there and saying, look, this is where we are, this is what we're thinking, do you have any thoughts? So I presented this a couple of weeks ago at another supplier forum, so apologies if you've seen this before, but we had some really good feedback. I've changed some of the content of this as a result of that feedback, and every time I just go through, this is where we are, get some feedback, we kind of alter it, change it, make amends. So what you see is very far away from having a concrete plan. I use this diagram because it's a good way of kind of just explaining. If you've got the chap there on the left, you go from having no idea to some idea of what you're going to be doing, and effectively we are here. We are just kind of formulating thoughts, getting views, getting opinions, and just taking on board a lot of where other people are going. So this is unashamedly drawing its lessons from Project 13. We're talking to a lot of other infrastructure owners. We've spent a lot of time with the utilities, water utilities, Highways England, in the nuclear industry, Sellafield particular, just getting their thoughts and opinions. So hopefully you're reasonably familiar with Project 13. I mean, it came out of ICE originally, so hopefully you're reasonably familiar, but you don't need to be to understand where we're taking this. So today we're here, and then by the end of May we think we'll have something which is a reasonable formed opinion about how we are going to approach CP7, what the makeup is, how we're going to work with the supply chain, how do we incentivize all of those good things. So we're in the back end of that, but I'll take you through where we are today. First point in time is the timeline, because every good project hangs off a timeline, we know that. So I thought I would just quickly take you through a bunch of acronyms so you can get a feel for why we are doing this now and we're not doing it closer to CP7, because clearly we are still 3 years out. But at the top here we have what we call our regulatory timeline. So this is what we have to do from a regulation perspective, working with the ORR, working with government to build up the strategic business plan. And then at the bottom are all the elements that I and my team are doing really to get ourselves into a position where we can go out to market. So if I just quickly explain the top bit here, this is our strategic business plan submission to the regulator and to government. So that wraps up everything that we will do. It's a Network Rail submission, but it's regionally based. So it takes everything that we want to do in the southern region and says, right, if you want all of these things, this is how much it will cost in CP7. So that's the kind of the drop dead date for informing regulator and government of all the things that we would like to do. This is informed by another set of acronyms. We've got the HLOS and we've got SOFA. So HLOS is the high level output specification. So this is DFT saying, this is what we are looking to do. This is what we require in the next control period. And then SOFA is the statement of funds available. And it's our friends in Treasury saying, this is how much money is available. So clearly we've got to balance funding against aspirations. That gets wrapped up in the SBP. So where we are right now, concept to blueprint. So we're just developing those plans, and that aligns to that end of May date in terms of coming up with, we think this is our approach. Now, the key date here is our integrated delivery partner. So what we will, and I'll explain how we will build that up and what that means, but effectively we want to have, when we go into the SBP, rather than it being just a Network Rail informed view of life, it's a back-to-back with Network Rail and the supply chain. So in order to do that, we've got to have our partners on board and at least 6 months getting underneath the skin of what are our proposals, how are our unit rates built up, and giving us some insight that is all right. And so we get that agreement all the way through from client through the supply chain. So that's kind of the timeline of what we're trying to achieve. I'll take you through, I'll do this quite quickly because I know we're keen to ask questions. The concept. So if we take the asset management life cycle at the highest level, you kind of have an asset and you're either at any point in time you're operating it and maintaining it, or you go into a space of renew it. And then you have a bunch of bright people who are balancing what is, in terms of Network Rail's terms, quite a considerable portfolio of assets. And you're always balancing that life extension with renewals. So this concept just talks about renewals. We've exempt enhancements for now, because what we want to do is we want to get the renewals delivery model right. CP6 and 5 was heavily dominated by renewals. We are certainly this control period, 80% of our work bank is renewals, and it's just shy of £4 billion. So still a considerable work bank. There are elements where enhancements will fit this model. So things like AFA schemes, a £5 million overbridge, those things will probably be right to fit in here, but we've just kind of said, let's get renewals right and then work out if there's other things that the delivery mechanism is right for. So if we just have a look in the renewal space, effectively you've got breaking it down into 4 chunks of work. You identify what you need to do, you initiate your plan, and you construct it, you go away and build it. So if we just roll that out into a linear fashion, clearly in these bits here, so define the outputs and value. So these are the bright sparks in that asset management red space, defining what we need to do. Then we go into optimizing those through the initiation and planning, go away and build it, deliver the outputs. So if I just play back the regulatory timeline against how the asset management lifecycle looks, it kind of looks like this. So we have a regional strategy. So right now, today, we've got people working out from a southern region, what do we want to achieve? What are our targets? What are our aspirations? What do we think? Then, as I mentioned, we've got government, we've got Treasury coming in. So that's the midpoint next year, saying this is what we need and money available, balance all that up, coming into the SBP, and then you go away and deliver the work bank in CP7. So if I just move to CP6 now and just play out kind of how did this work when we were doing it last time against this backdrop? Well, asset management were going through a devolved world at the time, so we had kind of a centralized view of life and we had a root view of life. They were coming together and they were just working through what was required. Then the asset management guys came together with, at the time, IP Central, so the cost planning element, and kind of really at a very high level started to put some estimates together. Then we went into this, what I call a no man's world. So you saw from the timeline that you submit your SBP and it's probably about 2 years away from when you start. So we went through that, we submitted it, and kind of then in no man's land, then we started to bring on the delivery teams. So the IP at the time, now Capital Delivery, and the framework suppliers at right on day one of CP6. And so the big problem that we had really was we started to then build up project costs, project by project, so very little portfolio management, and there were target costs because the bulk of our renewals was through frameworks, still is. And we start to work out or start to build those target costs. And once we deliver those, then we reward on project outputs established at that planning phase. Now, you could say that's absolutely brilliant, but the problem that we found was that we were quite often paying out gain share on money that we never had, because the link back to the SBP just wasn't there. So what we were paying for projects fell into that no man's land in terms of what we paid or what we contracted to do against what the government contracted us for. So there was a bit of a flaw in the plan, as it were. So how does CP7 look? Well, clearly that flaw is the big element we're trying to fix. As I said, we're moving into the world of Project 13, so we've started to adopt the straightforward Project 13 terminology, and my next slide will just tell you how we think that's going to play out with the current capabilities. But if you can wait until that next slide, I'll explain how we see it in CP7. So capable owner will be starting to, and as they are now, just working out what it is we want from a region. Then, as you saw from my timeline, we'll bring in our integrated delivery along with a capable owner. So this is the supply chain coming in as we work through that initiation phase to really help us to inform and give us insight, so our SBP really reflects reality. And then integrated delivery goes into the planning phase, and then clearly continuing into the construction phase with the ecosystem. So that's the rest of the tier 2, tier 3 supply chain elements. So that's kind of what our aims are. If I just quickly describe those three elements. So we've said there's three parts to the enterprise. The enterprise is the whole, capable owner is the client side, integrated delivery is all the capabilities at the high level to bring it together to portfolio manage the whole renewals, and then the ecosystem is the lower tiers that then support. So the way that we are shifting our capabilities around, or the way that we see it, is the network rail capability. We are organised with asset management, commercial and capital delivery, and then we have clearly the supply chain with going through the tiers. So going into the capable owner, we've got clearly asset management and commercial, and some elements of capital delivery, because they've got delegated authorities which probably are better served in the capable owner. And then the integrated delivery is assembled from a number, we're not quite sure how many, but of the tier 1 suppliers coming into integrated delivery and forming a joint team with the capital delivery elements. And then we've got the ecosystem then made up of tier 2 and tier 3. There are some, probably we'll see some tier 1s in there as well, because where we've got some niche products or technical specifics, that would mean that they're better served in the ecosystem, but they're still tier 1s. So that gives you a flavour of as I talk about these Project 13 entities, how we see today's world moving into that. Now, if we go back to the CP7 model, what are the aims? What are we trying to do with this? So clearly a joint strategic business plan with the market, which fixes that CP6 problem that we had previously. And then we have that's linked direct to reward and incentives are based on the SBP outcomes. So that whilst we go to government with our joined up plans, our incentivisation plans will also be joined up with that promise to government. So in order to ensure that is kept intact, we've got to have absolute transparency and maintain that SBP business plan. So we never lose sight of the original intent of the SBP. It will be controlled under change control, which is probably an area that we're not quite as good on as we should be. Then clearly going out to market early, well ahead of starting on SBP, the control period, sorry, it gives us the ability to innovate. We're keen to invest in digitalisation and joint platforms. So as the integrator forms, use whatever systems are right and fit for purpose for delivering in today's world. And then we'll just agree data exchange points coming back into what can only be called as some of the more legacy systems in the Network Rail side. So we don't get into this place where we are enforcing some of our older systems onto the supply chain and then having to work around some of the limitations that brings. Then the big change really for the capable owner from today is moving into very much an output, an outcome basis for remitting, which will be aligned to affordability. So I do say that the best, in my simple head, is to say that the remit to the integrator needs to be as close as, here's the complete work bank, 4 or 5 years, go away and work out how you're going to do it and come back and tell us. So that's where we are trying to get to, and clearly there are going to be some limitations on that. We would want certain assets changed out earlier, and so there will be a little bit of definition, but we're trying to keep that to the absolute minimum. Then, of course, aligned objectives throughout this, the removal of duplicated effort. We've talked a lot about man marking, especially over assurance. I think we all operate very similar assurance regimes. So certainly at the lower, earlier level one, kind of what we call the assurance at the coalface, we can agree, actually, we'll share outputs and we'll only do it once. And then at the other end, really is ensuring that we have an aligned fee structure throughout the integrator and ecosystem. So a real avoidance against fee on fee where we can achieve that. So those are the aims. If we just put these in terms of the benefits, we do benefit mapping for business cases for such things like this. And this is kind of the outcome statement that we're beginning to just draw from. And so goals in CP7, you know, I don't think there's anything in here that people would disagree with. Better decision making, better incentivization, inclusive culture, more diverse thinking, and then a reduction in TOTEX, so OPEX and CAPEX combined, where we can drive out cost. We did a piece of work about 6 months ago. We talked to the supply chain, we talked to asset management, we talked to capital delivery, and we said, what are the issues today? What are the things we're trying to fix? And again, there's a list that very few people have said I disagree with, but things like, you know, the man marking, a lack of trust, too controlling, not focused on outcomes, poor portfolio management. That's kind of today's world and where we're starting from. So as we've been talking and drawing lessons from others who are going on the Project 13 journey, it's been one of the key lessons I said is you've really got to have and be very clear about a set of principles, some touchstones that live for the duration of the contract that you continually go back. So you'd be very clear about what's important. So most come, you know, with 6, some have come along with 10. We've created 9, and if you've seen this presentation before, you'll see that we have changed a few of them following the feedback that we had with the supply chain a couple of weeks ago. So what are they? Well, we need to be collaborative, we need to be aligned, and we need to be agile. We've got to think certainly innovatively and using the right digital platforms and the whole driving the digital agenda. We've got to be a learning organisation, so this continuous improvement, because this contract, we're looking not just at CP7, we are looking at a 5+5 for this arrangement. So This is here for some time, so continuous improvement, very key to that. And we've got to be sustainable. And then then what is it? What is this entity? Will it be outcome based? It will be properly incentivized, and it will be affordable for the rail industry, affordable for UK PLC. So that's the principles. We've brought these together into a little kind of diagram, and we've said that these principles apply to all three elements of the enterprise. So they are just appropriate to the capable owner as they are to the ecosystem. Quite often, and I hear regularly, the criticism we get is we say, oh, those people over there, they need to be more collaborative, and we don't look at ourselves. We don't look at ourselves as a client or an owning organisation and apply some of these principles to ourselves. That cannot happen in this world. Those 9 principles apply to everyone. The other key tenets in this is whatever we do, it's got to be safe. So that's non-negotiable, as is it's always on the side of passengers and freight. You've heard the putting passenger first mantra. That will be with us. It will be embedded into this CP7 model, and they will be the 2 non-negotiable key tenets: always safe, always on the side of passengers. So we've kind of broadened this out. Again, we've just put some bullet points in here, and as this is being videoed, I won't dwell on this too much. It means that you can go have a look in the video and look at these at leisure, and just if you've got comments, as I say, on any of this, just drop us a note or ask the questions. So that's kind of where we are in our thinking. That's CP7. Hopefully it kind of makes sense. The feedback that we've had from the supply chain has been overwhelmingly positive, and I think what's been nice is that people have been really thankful that we've come out with our earliest thinking, really to help you guys input and help shape and form this with us, rather than doing something at a later date. So CP7, what's the big kind of changes in CP6? Well, this clearly is underpinned with speed, and hopefully you are familiar with the work that we've been doing with the DfT around the speed program, and really getting underneath the skin of how we do essentially enhancements. It started with enhancements, but we are making it applicable to renewals as well. So the strapline for speed originally was half the time and slash the cost. That still remains. We're probably in the space of half the time and half the cost in today's current economic climate. But what we're doing in Southern, which is probably slightly different if you've heard the approaches to speed in other regions, and the regions are just now picking this up. It was a bit of a centralised or a national programme. We've now moved it into the regions only just recently. So for us, because there is so much going on, we've got speed, we've got putting passengers first, we're thinking about CP7, we've kind of just putting it under the banner of think different. So very much just kick open the door. All of this is around, let's just think differently, let's think more creative. It's not just applicable to speed, it's about everything we do. So we have only just launched speed for the Southern region yesterday, in fact. So go on to this timeline here. The regional event 1, back end of April, you'll see there. It's the first time that we've gone out to our own teams and said, this is what we think speed means for us. This is what we're keen for you to do. And we'd like to do a similar event here towards the back end of May with a wider supply chain to get your thoughts and your opinions about how we take it forward from a southern perspective. So again, we've got some plans, but we are just thinking through them and how best to apply them. Clearly, as I said, Southern is very much renewals, 80% renewals. Some of the themes that have been developed out of the enhancements project don't exactly map back to the renewals program. So we are doing some work to make sure that when we go out, it's applicable to renewals and enhancements in terms of that think different. And then pace. Pace is one of the work streams out of speed. So one of the themes was, well, grip kind of is getting in the way. It's bogging us down in terms of allowing us to think creatively, to do things quicker. Let's do something different. So pace is the replacement for grip. That's slowly coming out. Slowly, it's coming out very rapidly, actually, for Network Rail, in terms of new processes, new ways of doing not just projects, but portfolios and programs. And we've got a small team there just working through how do we apply this into the southern region? How do we just link it back into really driving efficiencies? So we've just started now briefing out to our own teams internally. So that's our investment, sponsorship colleagues, our asset management, and our capital delivery. Going, these are the key changes as we move away from grip, and we're looking to do some supplier briefings. So Richard Anderson is running this program for us, and we've just about to announce a few dates, so kind of drop-in sessions throughout May, and Richard just can brief everyone about the changes, what it means, and how we implement this. So that's it really from me. Let me get out of that. Have I gone back to the normal?
Yes.
State? Okay, brilliant. So that was a very quick run through, hopefully not too garbled, but I'm sure you've got many questions. So Cameron, I'll hand back to you.
Thank you, Tim. So that's the end of the scripted agenda. So we're now available for questions and answers. If anyone's got questions, we'll hopefully provide some answers.
Hi, so thank you very much for all that. I've got a little bit of echo, but hopefully that seems to have gone away. As is customary, as the chair, I think I will ask the first question, but I see there's one popping up there. So question for Tim, really. It's very welcome what you're proposing here with the Project 13 approach, and particularly the fact that you're asking the supply chain to get involved with developing the strategic business plan once you know your SOFA and your HLOS. So the sort of SOFA and the HLOS set of the questions to do with what happens. You've got what to do, which comes from the HLOS. You've got how much money from the SOFA. At this point, at the point you do the strategic business plan, will you be making assumptions about the amount of access that will be available for these different types of jobs? Because that is a big decider about how much things cost.
Yes, we will make we'll make some core assumptions, because that's all we can do today. Of course, you know, one of the things that you can see, certainly Southern region, I can't talk about the other regions, but a much closer alignment working with our talks. We've got various reviews coming to the end. We start to see the Williams review coming, whatever is in that, but it's certainly going to bring much closer relationships, whatever's in there. So as we start to get more insight into that, we can adjust it, but we're using kind of the base assumption today. But you can see in the Southern region, we're doing a lot more blockade working, and that's in consultation with the TOC. So we're kind of using almost the worst case scenario, if you like, of today's world. It can only get better. So that's the only thing that we can do. And as we move towards that, we hope in this time next year, we'll have a much clearer view of kind of the industry incentives, which, as we know, Schedule 4, Schedule 8 drive a lot of the access conversations.
Great, thank you. So, Tom, would you've got your hand up? Would you like to pose your question now?
Yeah, I'll go off camera because I have to pull the microphone a bit too close to me. The question for Tim, and it is whether you have any preliminary thoughts on the types of suppliers that you'll be anticipating for the integrated team.
No, I mean, we're just kind of evolving that now. I mean, clearly, you've got, you know, the normal building civils, track signalling in there, and so clearly you've got some elements. But what we're trying to do is be very open in terms of our thinking. So and we're going out to everyone and going, you know, we've identified certainly 3 because that's just generally what our work bank is made up of. Can't get away from that. But are there any others missing? Do we think those are the right ones? Do we have E&P in there? Is that right? Is that wrong? So again, we've kind of taken some views, but we're very open and testing those.
Okay, thank you.
Good, thank you. No more hands up. If you could put your hand down, Tom. So it'll be no surprise to any of you that I have another question. Once again, I just want to emphasise that this Project 13 approach and sort of partners is excellent. But speaking for I mean, we've got 40 odd members here, and probably 10 of them are very actively involved in the Southern, and there's 30 who aren't. Will you be able to keep the sort of door open through the next control period for people to keep a foot in the railway industry, to keep a, you know, to keep a railway business thriving in their company? Because so in addition to looking at you as Network Rail Southern, I am slightly concerned with the 5 different regions going off and doing slightly different things, that this might further concentrate the supply chain down to just a very few companies within the wider supply base. And, you know, unintentionally among you regions, you might squeeze a lot of people out and reduce the competition.
I mean, the answer to that is yes, because we've always got to make sure that supply chain is there, come what may. So, you know, the easy answer is yes. Just to probably give you some reassurance, when we've been talking to others, and the water industry has been really good in this, in terms of really opening our eyes to say, whilst you're concentrating at the integrator, that framework of other suppliers are absolutely key, and you've got to have that as broad, as open, and running with a competitive edge through that. So I think what you've just said is the learnings that we're getting from others in that space, and that's the thinking that's going into our model anyway.
Yes, I think when you talk to the suppliers who are in, you get sort of the view that, oh, this is, do you know what I mean? You get a slightly rosier view of what you're doing than the people who aren't on the inside. So that's really welcome. I mean, what would be good is if there were some opportunities for sort of outside tenders, but you know, and you'd have to pick your schemes for it. But the sort of early contractor involvement type thing was done by the people who are on the inside in your Project 13 teams, and then you bundle some bits of work out to sort of let people keep a foot in the door and keep their railway businesses thriving. So
I mean, the other element to this is the enhancements. So we've excluded this. This is purely renewals. So you just meant, what reminded me then is you mentioned ECI. ECI is really powerful in the enhancements world. So that's the element that, you know, it still represents 20% of our work bank. In CP6, what it might look like in CP7, we can only kind of guess what DFT is going to come out with, but there is still a large proportion of work that will not flow through this model. Okay,
so I think the next hand up was Daniel Cronshaw. Sorry if you're a Daniel, but that's what it says here.
That's fine. I'm definitely Daniel. Hi. Will the Network Rail internal governance and procedures match the proposed CP7? Because at the moment, quite a lot of the challenges that contractors have is when they put forward new ideas and changes, it doesn't match the governance and doesn't match the current procedures for Network Rail.
Do you know what? I'm going to, Cameron, do you want to answer that from a speed perspective? And then I can give you a CP7 perspective.
So absolutely. So that's probably one of the main tenets of Project Speed is to get that alignment and ensure that our governance and requirements are agile, flexible, and suitable for what we need to do. So the majority of the Project Speed initiative is focused internally on, well, how do we clear out of the way the obstacles, the artificial obstacles that don't add value, that prevents us from delivering in a speed ethos, quickly and as cost effectively as we can. So yes, all eyes are on making sure that the red tape is out of the way, and whilst we're looking at that for Project Speed, we will then look at that again as we roll out our CP7 proposition to ensure that we have appropriate agile governance that recognises and supports this going forward.
And then I think for CP7, when we're asking supply chain to be incentivized with our SBP, I think what we can't do, and this is going to be hard, but we're all up for a hard challenge, which is to take the hand off the tiller to allow you guys to innovate. Because if we don't allow you to do that, then you'll never come under the SBP. And if you don't do it, you're not going to make much money. You're not going to profit from it. So we have to do it. So it's one of these things that this model will only work if we allow you to come forward with different ways of doing things and we enable that to happen. Because if we just stand back and go, no, sorry, you can't do it like that, we're not going to get anywhere.
Thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you. So, Kate, you're the next one with your hand up.
Thank you. And I had a couple of questions, but I also have an observation on Daniel's question, actually. So on that governance question, I've heard, so Kate Jennings from Railway Industry Association, and thank you, Bill, for inviting me. So on the governance question, I've heard Tim Shoveler say that one of the ways you're going to align this is by having the route managing directors having both the OMR and enhancement budgets, having financial authority. And to me, that sounds like an eminently sensible thing to do, because you've got, then a sort of single mind on the profit and loss and priorities and portfolio management and all the rest of it. But is that true? Is that what's going to happen in your region too? Is my first question. I'll let you think about that a minute. My second question was, building on Bill's question, really, to sort of say, what does this mean for all the suppliers on this call and others, is where does your category management strategy fit in your planning? Because that I think is a really interesting way to manage. You've got, say, 2 suppliers on the region already, but you want to keep other suppliers in the market, sort of thing. So I'll be quite interested in what you're thinking on category management. And then the third question is about enhancements. So you're saying 80% of your money will be OMR, and I appreciate that. But equally, I don't think anybody would want you to be defeatist about the fact that lots of money will be spent in the north. So how can we help you to make the case for the enhancements, that you think need to happen? That I know before COVID, there was a sense that the Brighton Main Line, would fall over if you didn't invest in it, for example, or Croydon or something. So are there some schemes that you expect to still be really important, and can we help you make the case for that?
So, Cameron, do you want to pick up?
I was going to invite Sam Turner, who's our Regional Commercial Director, in. She's probably best placed to tackle some of that. Sam, are you there?
I am. So I think that so we've had for quite a while the total budget right within the region. I think the enhancements goes through a slightly different funding cycle. So it always does, and I think it will do. I'm looking at Tim to see if he nods at me and Darren, but my understanding is enhancements will continue to go through the same funding cycle it does through Treasury and the DFT. So that I don't think there will be a point where we can trade off enhancements funding with renewals and operating and maintenance expenditure. But we do have the operating, the maintenance and the renewals budget, right? So we can make trade-offs within our own remit ourselves, and we have done for a very long time. So I can't remember, what was the other part to your question?
Category management.
Yeah.
That was the one I was expecting you to talk on, Sam.
Right. Sorry. So category management. So we've set up a relatively new function for us is category management. So historically, I think it's fair to say that we've not been great. I think, putting it politely, at category management. Okay, we've sort of done a bit of it around the edges, and then we've sort of gone straight into procurement strategy. So we've put in category management as a function within its own right, to make sure we're developing proper category strategies for all of our key categories of work, and they sort of start right at the beginning. So we're working out really what it is we want to buy before we get into how we want to buy it. And they're staged, as you can imagine. We're doing them at the right time. So you can look at what Tim's done and what he's talked about with CP7 as it's really a category strategy. So what is it we want to buy? And then when we've worked that out, we'll then go and procure it. And we've got a whole host of those going on across the board. They look at the types of model, what's available in the marketplace. They might touch into a bit of procurement about like dynamic frameworks and that, which you'll see coming along quite a bit, where we're trying to look at those which help a lot of the SME type markets to really try and aid there. So a lot of work in that area. You'll see a lot more market engagement, I think, as a result of that, and some of you might already be experiencing that, because that's a key part of developing those strategies, is speaking to the market and understanding what's out there early on. Does that help?
Yes, yeah, no, that does. And I suppose, again, anything you can do to give transparency on that, on, you know, what your categories are or when you might want to talk to people. And I'm sure, you know, again, CECA and ourselves, we can help facilitate that if it's useful.
Yeah, and we're pulling together at the moment our pipeline, so we can publish the pipeline once we should have that over the next month or so. I'm happy to publish the pipeline of the category strategies and how that fits in with our procurement events. There's nothing secret in there with all these things. If we publish it, it's always subject to change. So you know, we can't guarantee it's fixed forevermore, because you know, the environment we're working in is changing. But I'm happy to give visibility of what the plan is. I can see Darren's got his hand up. Is it Darren?
No, I think, can I just go back on the OMR? Okay, so when I quote 80%, that's just of the capital spend. So the ops and maintenance is OPEX, renewals is CAPEX. And so when we look at from a capital delivery perspective, we'll either do renewals, which forms part of our settlement, or enhancements, which are standalone business cases with the department, hence there being separate funding, because you're not linked into the 5-year control period with enhancements, clearly. But as Sam said, the ops, maintenance, renewals budget all fall within the regional managing directors, that they can move that around as they see fit.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So Daniel, you've got your hand up again, or?
No, sorry. Just because just around the SPV, the integrator input into it, which is obviously really important going forward. Will the integrator carry any risk on their input? So if they say a job's going to cost 100,000, it costs 150,000. Is there any risk for the integrator around that changing?
No. So our current assumption and our proposal is there is gain, but there is no pain.
Thank you very much. That's good to hear. So I've got another question, since no more hands have come up. A good part of what, if you look numerically among our members, there are more of them doing works delivery type activity in the southern region across the three routes. I don't think there's one on the high speed. I think there's one on stations. Have you got plans for that? They're obviously more sort of they're smaller bits of work. Have you developed plans for those for the next control period?
So yeah, works delivery is part of capital delivery today in the southern region. We're probably one out of, well, two of us, I think, have moved into that, bringing it all under one roof. So today, works delivery, capital delivery, all act as one, and that'll be the same as CP7. So when I've talked through that model, all of the works delivery will flow through there. We expect works delivery to operate in the more agile, less complex world that they do today. There is still a requirement, there's still a need for that, and we're very mindful and we're mindful today that what we didn't want to do bringing works delivery in is start to put on more of the processes that we've got on capital delivery that are appropriate for complexity or complex works. And that's still a requirement in CP7. There needs to be a route to get to the tier 2, tier 3 for the more agile, quick turnaround, feet-to-foot projects without having a cumbersome process that's being applied to them. Because we all know that that's the quickest way to be inefficient.
Yes, and one of the complaints we have, and I wouldn't say it's particularly evident in the southern region, but there are a load of very, very small value, very transactional mini bids done for small bits of work that, even if you win, you've probably destroyed your margin in declaring the bid. That's very difficult for contractors, and then you find probably there's some bigger value things where you think, well, actually you probably could stand the bidding costs in delivering that, and they tend to be direct awarded rather than tendered. It's quite a difficult, it's a difficult area for members. I would say 20% of those who hold works delivery contracts are very happy with them. Probably 20 or 30% are okay, and probably almost half of them are probably saying I've got serious concerns about them.
Can I pick that one up?
Yeah, please. Yeah. I'm sorry to be
controversial
controversial with this.
It's not controversial at all. Not at all. Quite frankly, I'll be absolutely straight with you. I don't think it's ideal at the moment, the setup, and what I've certainly seen is fairly piecemeal. It is quite piecemeal in terms of how we're allocating the work. So there are a couple of things we're working on immediately. One is to determine a much clearer structure for allocating work between capital delivery and works delivery, because we've got some confusion there about where and when that work should be placed with who. And so we want to try and make that more automated or more automatically obvious, if you like. And then the second is to look at that supply chain appointment and particularly works delivery Wessex, where Patrick Gallagher's just moved into role. He's immediately latched on to the fact that he needs to look at the contracting frequency and the sort of the churn and turnover and immediacy of it all. So there is a piece of work there to try and look at that. And the way that Tim and I have been talking about this is effectively trying to bring the CP6 state or world closer to the CP7 vision. So if we can get as close as we can with the CP6 current setup and move it gradually towards the CP7 model, we'd reduce the size of the jump we need to make at the end of the control period. So I absolutely agree with what you said, to be honest. I can't argue with it. I think there is work to do there.
Well, that's really good, because I have had people quite defensive of it. So it's nice to realise we're all aligned in our view of it, really. Yeah. So Tom, you've got your hand up now.
Yeah, a question for Darren, following the instructions that we all received regarding unassisted lookout working. Whether I just wanted some feedback from Network Rail on the impact of that instruction, both within maintenance and also feedback from the supply chain.
You want feedback from me first?
Well, yes. If you've had any feedback from the supply chain, it would be useful to hear. But also certainly feedback from Network Rail on maintenance activities.
Thanks, Tom. It's funny you should say that, but I've put it on my agenda for my team meeting next week, because I was going to seek a bit of feedback from the team on what we think how we think that has landed and transpired. Actually, I was actually going to fish for that next week, so I don't have any immediate feedback, but I will shortly. Broadly, can tell you that there's been not a lot of noise, so that probably bodes well. I think we've had a couple of challenges in works delivery, but I think we're working through it. So my understanding, and I'm quite happy to be corrected, but my understanding is that broadly people are working to find ways to cope with it. I think we are running the risk that we push more work into more formal possessions, and therefore drive other problems, pressure on getting access and things like that may become more difficult, and that's what we've got to watch. But as far as I know, I've not been hit with a sea of complaints or other such stuff, but I'm happy to take other people's views, and particularly the supply chain, as you say.
Yeah, well, I can certainly let you know that we've had many line blocks cancelled at late notice because maintenance need the access, and I'm sure ours isn't the only case. And we're certainly, for the one or two projects that I'm thinking about, we're just pulling together the impact at the moment. But it would be worth hearing from others as to whether they've been severely impacted.
Does anybody on the call have a view on that? If you're reluctant to speak up, email me and I'll get in touch with Darren afterwards. Oh, hold on, we've got one here. A comment. Agree with Tim.
Okay, well, I'm quite happy to take emails or feedback separately. So if you've got specific experiences you want to save the conversation, if you want to send me specific experience and feedback, I've got no problem with blunt or straight feedback. Not an issue with that whatsoever. So the more we know about what goes on, the better. So I've got no issue with people dropping me a note and letting me know what they think. And if we've got problems to fix, we would want to try and tackle them. The only thing I would like to say is that this is all about keeping people out of the way of trains. I mean, the whole point is to make this safer. So we are doing it for the right reason, but absolutely recognise that there will be secondary implications. So
yeah, I think
go up and then disappear again.
Sorry, Darren. I think we would all agree with that. When we had the session with you, I think we all applaud the step forwards. It's how we as an industry change our access regime, and we're going through, I suppose, I won't call it growing pains, but transition pains. Yeah. And I think we just need to understand how the future looks as well.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to take that feedback, and as I say, as blunt, that can be as blunt as you like. I don't have a problem with that. But the more we know, the better. So
yeah, okay, thanks.
Good.
Thanks.
So we've had quite a few questions here, but if I could say, and I would put myself at the top of this list, it's the usual suspects who've been asking the questions here. Are there any people on the call who'd like to ask a question? And I'm particularly thinking that some of you who haven't worked recently in the southern region, and have you got points to make? I think there's as a region, they obviously have very good liaison with the people who are on the patch, as it were, the insiders. But are there people here who always aspired to go and work for this sort of premier region of Network Rail who aren't there yet at the moment, who'd like to raise any questions? I'm thinking of you, Dave, really. And I didn't mean Alan. Oh, here we are. Darren, would you like to ask?
Thank you. You can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, you spoke about, in terms of the goals for CP7, better decision making, incentivization, etc., and involving the supply chain that you were just mentioning. And how does that supply chain get involved if, as you say, perhaps they aren't already on the current CP6 for that particular region? They may be involved with another region or not one at all.
Who were you with, Darren?
Skanska.
Okay. Kim?
Do you want me to answer that?
Well, I was going to, I'll do my bit, then I'll hand over to you. Is that all right, Sam?
Yeah, it's fine.
So what we've done a very broad, we're doing one-to-ones with a lot of the supply chain, 30-35, and in terms of getting a very clear rationale to make sure that we can have that dialogue under a formal process. What we've gone to anybody who's on a framework delivering work, framework today, so the current incumbents and those that actually were unsuccessful in bidding it, So we're going to people actually who aren't currently delivering. Funnily enough, we talked to Skanska on Wednesday. So you're involved in the detailed conversations. Anyway, so that's how we've been able to, and under the regs, be able to talk to not just incumbents, but actually those. And we think we've pretty much got a real broad church of people in and out of the region, and a few non-rail as well.
Okay, thank you. Have you been talking to the smaller companies as well in that respect, Tim?
We've done all the frameworks, whether it's capital delivery, works delivery.
Oh, excellent. Good. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Just to add that, I think, all our supplier comms and supplier events are open to anybody. So you don't have to be a current supplier. I think Skanska are on our list, and I'm sure I've seen Skanska at our supplier events and welcome to continue. And we publish our pipeline as well, so all the opportunities are published. I think we publish, I think we got well in the 90% in terms of pipeline publication now. So yeah, keep attending, keep being involved, because it's great to have everybody involved. And we're keen to have everybody and include everybody, not just those that are currently suppliers of ours.
Yep. And you were certainly busy enough at Waterloo, weren't you, at Skanska? So yeah, very busy. So here's another drags from Sir Robert McAlpine.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Bill, and good afternoon, everyone. So my question, really, Tim, is around what you presented is highly attractive to the industry, but as a complete new entrant. So as Bill says, from McAlpine, we're a major player in the industry. We think we have a lot of skills and expertise which fits well in terms of the integrator role that you're looking for. Well, how do you approach the procurement of the integrator role in a Project 13 model if you are looking at only engaging with the existing supply chain? And are you thinking ahead in terms of how you procure those skills and expertise, which obviously is critical to carrying out the integrator role successfully?
Sorry, so thank you very much for asking that, Drag, because it is quite brave to put your head up and say things like that at a meeting with all your peers. So thank you.
You're welcome.
So let me answer the how we formulate it, because we know not just in the rail industry but all of the industries, there isn't such a thing as an integrator. It's not, you don't go out to the market and say, I'll have one of these, please, and it exists. And so that's one of the things that we're just going through. How do we form that integrator, knowing that it doesn't exist today? If you look across many of the different sectors, no one's quite, everyone's slightly different in this respect. So we haven't, one thing we know is it doesn't exist today. We've got to form it. We were just juggling whether is it market form, do we do it, how do we bring those components apart so it's together so they work very, very effectively, and those are the conversations we're having with others to find out what are their lessons. So we've gone in with this with no clear view other than it doesn't exist today and we can't procure it as a single entity as let's have an integrator, please. So those are the conversations that we're having internally and with others who have gone through this process. Cameron, did you want to just pick up on the other?
Yeah, I was going to say the other part that we'll pick up on is when we do come out to the market, we will not limit ourselves to our usual supply chain as we did in CP6. There will be an open call for competition. We'll be using the government's find a tender type sort of approach. So that we will be sending out a call for competition to as wide a market as is interested in playing with us. And so when I did the procurement for CP6, we again opened it wide and sought not only incumbents but anyone. We had at our initial launch event for CP6, we had such a diverse range of people. We did consciously try and attract some people from other industries, at the time, our capital delivery director. She'd come from the petrochem industry, and we actively went pursuing some other players outside just to make sure we sought the best possible people, and that's what we're looking for going forward. The best possible people. So they might not be railway people to date. This is a very different skill set we're looking for, and so the call for competition will be broad.
Good. And if you could allow plenty, given that you're, when you're doing your sort of expression of interest process via all the things you do, if you could allow plenty of time for it, please, given that what you're asking people to do is a bit out of the ordinary. It's not exactly easy to say, we know exactly what they're going to do because they've done it the same for time immemorial. It'd be great for that. And if you could let perhaps us and Ria know when you're going to put the ODU notice out, whatever the new word for ODU is, showing my age here, aren't I? If you let us know, we'll make quite sure that members know it's coming.
Yes, find a tender, Bill.
Find a tender, yeah. I must get these new terms up together. At least I've stopped calling you all rail track anyhow, haven't I?
Always a step forward.
Just on a point about kind of the non-rail and new entrants, that's what we're also trying to bring in as well, because there's a lot of, and this is aligned with the construction playbook that you'll know, which is bringing in MMC, productionalizing it, because we're in a renewal space, and we don't do that today. And sometimes I'll say we're quite critical of the supply chain of not doing that. That's because we just drip feed the market with bits of work, and it doesn't allow you to do it. So we haven't got it. I don't think we've not cracked productionalizing renewals in the market today, and it's not because you guys haven't done anything. It's because how we've approached it, and we've drip fed the market. So, but it is a skill that we need for CP7, because that is the way that will drive the real efficiencies.
So excellent. So I think we have 4 minutes left, so we could squeeze one last question in if anybody's got one. So gone. So it only leaves me to thank Tim, Cameron, Sam and Darren for giving this presentation. And I must admit, it is really, really welcome that you're telling us all this, and it's welcome that you're going for a sort of Project 13 approach and looking at everything all together, because and speaking for our smaller members, it's nice to see that you are looking at works delivery as well, because that's a big issue for an awful lot of our members. Good. So this is it. Finished. We're finished 3 minutes early, look, so you can get a quick cup of tea in before you go on to your next Zoom call or Teams call or whatever it is.